You want to know who the real threat is, Madam President? I'll give you a hint. They don't look like our chief author. They don't look like the folks up in the gallery. They don't look like the folks out in the rotunda. They look like many of the members that sit in the front. And you don't have to take my word for it. According to DHS, Madam President, the greatest domestic threat facing the United States comes from, quote, racially or ethnically motivated violent extremists, specifically those who advocate for the superiority of the white race, not our immigrants. We are safer and we're better off because of them.
The second complaint was that Fateh didn't respond when his brother-in-law, Musa Muhammad, was convicted of lying to a federal grand jury about ballots he turned in on behalf of other voters in 2020 without their permission.
So based on the advice of my lawyer, I'm again going to invoke my Fifth Amendment right and decline to answer.
Dawson Kimyon was Fateh's campaign manager, but took the Fifth Amendment repeatedly when asked about the campaign. Eventually, the panel dropped the second complaint, finding no evidence that Fateh knew about the ballot situation.
So, needless to say, the whole Zohran Mamdani trend is not going away anytime soon. As a matter of fact, it is only intensifying in deep blue cities. And that, of course, poses a major problem for the unfortunate residents of these places who actually do not vote for and support this kind of lunacy. But I think, on the other hand, it's worth noting this is a massive problem, nationally speaking, for Democratic establishment leadership, because in the long-standing war between the more establishment corrupt people and the corrupt progressives, right, as I always say, it is two losing options here ultimately for the Democratic Party. You talk about, for instance, the standing of Hakeem, Jeffries, and Chuck Schumer in the party. You talk about the fact that going into the 2026 midterms, not only do they stand at a 19 to 20% approval rating, which is abysmal, but also potentially the bad image that the Zohrans, the Omar Fatehs of the world can pose or paint for the moderate swing district voters who are not so keen on voting for extreme candidates like this. So with the backdrop of all of that today, we got to bring you the news out of the city of Minneapolis, Minnesota, after apparently this guy that we covered more recently, the Zohran clone, right? This guy right here, Omar Fateh, apparently defeated Jacob Frey, the sitting mayor of Minneapolis, for the Democrat endorsement in the mayor's race of Minneapolis, which is, of course, crazy to consider because this guy here, Frey, let's remember, was the mayor during BLM in 2020. Okay, he is an extremely radical guy himself. He is basically as progressive as you can get.
Somali hanulato! Somali hanulato!
But apparently, the voters of Minneapolis said they want more than that. As a matter of fact, they want more. They want a guy here, apparently, as you'll see today, who does not even pledge loyalty to the United States of America. That is right. He apparently refers to Somalia as his home, despite the fact he was actually born here in the U.S. And so it really does tell you a lot. And apparently that's what the best of the Democrat Party, right, has to offer. People who do not even love or care about or pledge loyalty to this country. I mean, go figure. But with that said, guys, we will bring you the news here today, as well as show you kind of the crisis that is emerging nationally speaking for the Democrat Party over now the New York future mayor likely, and likely the Minneapolis future mayor. So with that said, guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content as usual, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing is not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. We're almost at 500K. Help us get there. Smash that red button. With that said, so for those of you who need a refresher course, or maybe you didn't follow this story in the beginning, you're wondering, who is Omar Fateh? As I said, basically a Zohran Mamdani clone here. He is a self-ascribed Somali, far left, probably socialist guy, he would even say himself, who got viral on the internet after launching this campaign ad for the mayor's race of Minneapolis. And you notice a lot sounds pretty similar here, right, to what you saw in New York. Actually, arguably even more radical, because Zohran at least knew to kind of tone down some of his past far hard socialist rhetoric when he was going to mainstream himself in the primary. This guy didn't even bother with that, so take a listen.
Everyone keeps asking me, Omar, why aren't you doing more videos? As a state senator with a second full-time job and a kid on the way, I just haven't been able to find the time. I've also been fighting for you, passing things like tuition-free college for working-class families, rideshare protections for our Uber and Lyft drivers, and the legalization of fentanyl testing strips. But this summer, you're gonna be seeing a lot more of me, because we deserve nice things in Minneapolis too. To make an affordable Minneapolis that works for everyone, we need a mayor that works as hard as you do. I'm ready to work hard to 1. Build a Minneapolis that working people can afford to call home. 2. Protect our city from a hostile White House. And 3. Diversify our city's public safety response. By increasing the minimum wage to $20 by 2028 and passing rent stabilization to stop price gouging and incentivizing new construction, we can protect workers. Protecting all of our communities from Donald Trump means not letting MPD interact with ICE, whether it's for an immigration raid or not. Our residents deserve a mayor that will stand up to Donald Trump and say, no, not in our community. Did you know that the city's own data showed that 47% of calls to MPD can be diverted to non-police response? Cops aren't social workers. Investments in programs like these ensure that the appropriate response arrives when we call 911. And we can actually free up police resources to focus on violent crime that detracts from community safety. Oh, I'm sorry. It's my campaign managers again. They've been on my case all week about make more videos. I'll find the time tomorrow.
So obviously already a lot to unpack there. I mean, he's running on ridiculous ideas like rent controls, which I like to note have never worked in the history of anywhere. Okay, as a matter of fact, they often just raise the prices of the rent and of course make housing far less accessible. But you know, okay, sanctuary city garbage, of course, that's what most Democrats do. I think the most insane thing he's running on is 5 years after BLM burned down half the city and everything you've seen out of Minneapolis. I mean, there's a bunch of places that closed, never reopened after the riots and stuff. In 2025 is still making the argument of, oh, don't send a police officer, send a social worker. Right? Remember that nonsense that the party dropped because they realized, oh, it sounds really stupid. Oh, it actually scares people a lot. No. Let's just go exactly back to making it even worse, right? Ironically, okay, he wants to apparently make the city of Minneapolis look very similar to Mogadishu, Somalia. I mean, that's basically the effort here. What does it mean to have a diversity police response? I'm not exactly sure, but we know what it means. Essentially, he wants to let the criminals run the city. And as I always so often say, to the residents of those places, this is arguably the best messaging you can do. Because, you know, saying, oh, he's against Donald Trump. Okay, it's a deep blue city. He's against sanctuary. He's for sanctuary city. Yeah, it's a deep blue city. Okay. The socialist ideas, they're liberals. What do you expect? But this thing right here, right, noting, hey, this guy is going to increase crime in your communities. That is one bipartisan issue that most voters, even liberal ones, when you present it in their face, like in California with the anti-crime propositions back in November, that is how you win. But anyways, with that in mind, apparently thus far the attacks have not been effective because as of last night, guys, Omar Fateh ended up winning the Democrat endorsement for the mayor of Minneapolis. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this was basically a vote within the local kind of Democrat Party there. All of Jacob Frey's supporters, the incumbent mayor, who, as I said, is a radical himself, right, have now left the convention, and the Socialists have apparently even taken over the Minnesota Democratic Farmers League, which once formerly was supposed to be known as the more moderate wing of the Minnesota Democrats, right? More the working class union guys, apparently now being run entirely by socialists who apparently do not even pledge loyalty to this country. What do you expect? Now, with that in mind, I think it is further worth noting here, okay, that you're talking about a party that even last night, okay, is finally now coming out and admitting, yes, they are the party of Democratic Socialists. Take a listen to that very speech at the convention just yesterday.
Let me say this very clearly. We are a Big Ten party. We are a coalition by definition, the Democratic Farmer Labor Party. Our party is made up of farmers and laborers. Our party is made up of progressives, environmentalists, feminists, democratic socialists, gays, lesbians, bisexual, transgender. We come from different places. We come from different spaces. We represent what is best about America. Our differences are our strength. If you want to be an authoritarian party, go be a Republican. We are not a top-down party. We're a bottom-up party. We're going to build this coalition together.
Well, apparently, as I said, included in that coalition include individuals, politicians, by the way, who do not even consider themselves to be American. And the reason I keep bringing that up is not to make some type of, like, anti-immigrant or something along those lines argument. No, I'm saying that specifically because Omar Fateh, this very guy who came from the Minnesota state legislature, has repeatedly referred not to Minneapolis or to Minnesota or to America, but to Somalia as his home. Okay, he himself is stating where his loyalty lies, and that is simply why I am bringing this up, and of course begs a serious question. How on earth and why can you be elected in the United States, not even pledging loyalty or considering your home to be in the United States? Does it not seem a little bit contradictory and highly problematic, to say the least? Well, here, take a listen for yourself.
We should make dua for him and pray for him. I understand that our Somali communities are all connected to each other here in Minnesota and back home, and I ask for your support. There's always been a link between our community here as well as back home, and I'm running to bridge that gap and unite all of us and represent all of us, because when we succeed here, we succeed everywhere. And I'm hoping to do that just like Abdurazak, inshallah.
Back home, inshallah. Nice to see that the assimilation into American culture is going so well, clearly, you know? Unbelievable, right? But of course, even you might think, okay, that's a little bit of an older video. I think it tells you a lot, frankly. He was a sitting politician at the time. But even take a listen to last night, as while he's accepting the endorsement from the local Democrat Party there, he's taking an interview here from a Somali news outlet speaking in Somali. I believe at least that's the language. It's certainly not English. And of course, it's just so telling. Take a listen.
عليكم مقعي وأيكي حسن وعادوا فرح سلام مانتا ولكن عمر فاتح نقدر next mayor of Minneapolis وهيستوريك واي وعرجنا Somali دقيق Minneapolis اللي صبحان وعوديا.
And you might be saying to yourself, okay, is it really that big a deal though that he just refers to Somalia as back home? Maybe he's just saying it as a sort of figure of speech. I mean, a lot of immigrants or ethnic minorities speak like that. No, it is a big deal. And I'll tell you especially why, because that tells you everything about the way that he thinks. Think about this for a moment, right? If you are renting a place versus you're owning a place, everyone knows, right? People take a lot better care of what they own. That's why home ownership is generally considered to be something that's so important for having a society, because when people are just renting things, they're leasing things, you don't really take care of it. You just kind of, whatever, the landlord will deal with it. You're just sort of a guest in their place. When it's your own home, you actually clean up, you actually cut your grass, you actually maintain the place, you do renovations to it, all of that stuff, okay? Same argument to be made, frankly, about immigration and, you know, where your loyalty is, right? As he's saying, he's basically just sees himself as a guest, a visitor in America. The real home is in Somalia. Okay, so do you think that this country is somewhere he would take good care of, right? He putting him into office, he doesn't even really view it as his true home. He doesn't care about it deeply enough on that level. That's exactly why, right? I find that there'd be a major issue in him saying, oh, yeah, back home apparently is freaking Somalia. And unfortunately, that is a trend that is far too rampant, frankly, in this country. Is, yeah, people basically just see it as some Airbnb to go to, you know, make money. It's an economic zone. It's not really a place. It's not really the real home. The real home is back somewhere else. You know, you're basically essentially looting the dying corpse of the empire that is America, and that's all they see it for, instead of actually, you know, as they so often say, planting the tree that future generations can sit in. So, you know, I have to say, I think that is something that is utterly important. But with all of that in mind, okay, he probably likely now is on track to be the mayor of the city of Minneapolis. But nationally speaking, it's an objective fact. Zohran and Fateh and these types of characters can, of course, pose a problem for Democrat leadership. And it was just earlier this week where Hakeem Jeffries was once again pressed on, what do you think of Zohran? What do you think of the rise of these candidates? And still refuses to give a straight answer one way or the other on it, because newsflash, they're kind of panicked about how to handle this. Take a listen.
Thank you, Leader. No doubt New York is going to play a big role in who controls the House next year. We've had Republicans tell us that the nominee for New York City mayor is a gift for Republicans in New York State. Do you think he's a political liability?
Donald Trump is a gift to Democratic prospects in Virginia, New Jersey, and in the midterm elections next year.
Jumping off of that, thank you. Two questions. One, will you be meeting with Mr. Mamdani? He's going to be here in D.C. this week. So one is, will you be meeting with him when he's here, or when will you be meeting with him? And two, do you agree with Cuomo's essentially thought or request that candidates who are not leading drop out by September?
I'm scheduled to meet with the Democratic nominee at the end of the week back home in Brooklyn. Haven't had a conversation with Eric Adams or Andrew Cuomo since the primary and have no current plans to do so at this moment.
Yeah, so he won't give a straight answer to the question, but I'll tell you why. It's precisely because the establishment leadership is scared and frankly looks weak right now, right? Because on one hand, if they call out Mamdani and they go to a battle with the socialists are going to win because they're more popular within the Democratic base and they kind of want to save face, show, hey, our voters out there that have turned completely crazy and we kind of allow that to happen. We're not against what's happening. Please keep us in leadership, right? But of course, at the same time, they understand that the progressives are a threat to their leadership. And so they kind of want to keep this awkward relationship and just say, oh, we're against Donald Trump. We're against Donald Trump. Well, Hakeem, I mean, you better hope that's the case, because right now you have the very progressive supporters of Mamdani are trying to primary you currently in your own congressional seat. They're talking about raising money for those efforts. You're not a very popular leader. I'm not sure, what happens when you sit on the fence for too long, but, frankly, I'm at least here. The one silver lining, the one good aspect of the rise of these types of insane candidates is it causes chaos and dissension within the Democratic Party, and we're always here for that, right? We enjoy the popcorn. Now, with that said, I think the last question I'd like to pose in today's video is what is going on in the state of Minnesota, and what is going on especially with the Democrats there just constantly being involved in weird scandals up to no good, because apparently now, right, it is coming out that there are investigations into Tim Walz having an affair with a CCP, Chinese Communist Party official back in the 1990s. And now people are asking questions like, is this another Eric Swalwell situation? Is this, what's her name, Fang going on? As I said, right, just what is going on with the state of Minnesota? Not sure, but take a listen.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz had a secret romantic relationship with the daughter of a Chinese Communist Party official, beginning in 1989 until it ended in 1992. That's what your investigation is zeroing in on.
Well, we had a whistleblower with the Department of Homeland Security come forward and tell us that the Department of Homeland Security had been monitoring Tim Walz for many years, way prior to Kamala Harris choosing him to be her running mate. They were concerned about the sheer number of times that Walz had been to China. They were concerned about who was actually paying for all those trips to China, considering that if you look at Walz's financial disclosure form, and I believe it to be accurate, he really doesn't have the means to pay for that many trips to China. And they were concerned as why is he going to China so many times? Because all the things that all the boxes are checked with Tim Walz that the Department of Homeland Security and our intelligence community look for in a potential American official or their family member being groomed or being influenced by the Chinese.
I have to say, no offense to Minnesota, but that whole place is just such a head scratcher to me. They're the only place in 2020 in the inner city where riots burn down half the city and the state gets more deep blue. That didn't happen in Kenosha. It doesn't happen in other places. Typically, you see a swing back after civil unrest. No, opposite happened, right? You have all this weird nonsense going on in Tim Walz's governor's office. All these people who work for Tim Walz formerly are going out and committing terrorist acts of violence. Omar Fateh is now the leading candidate. They're actually also worth noting here too, by the way, something I even forgot to mention about this guy. He's also come under investigation, from the ethics committee out of the Minnesota State Legislature. Totally forgot to mention this part, for getting free campaign ads on Somali TV, which raises serious questions about illegal coordination. He then later on tried to award the very same station $500,000 in state funding after they supported his campaign. Again, I ask the question here, what is going on with the state of Minnesota and especially the Democrat Party there? And somehow they keep failing upwards because Ken Martin, after all of this nonsense, is now the sitting main chair of the DNC. It's insane.
At the state capitol, Senator Omar Fateh was on the hot seat. Republicans have accused the Minneapolis Democrat of violating the Senate's ethics rules. As John Croman reports, the Ethics Committee held its first hearing on the case today.
The Somali TV of Minnesota, the YouTube channel, hosts several campaign-related videos featuring Senator Fateh in both in English and the Somali languages.
North Branch Republican Mark Curran laid out the conflict of interest complaint that he and fellow Senate Republicans have brought against DFL Senator Omar Fateh of Minneapolis. They assert the Somali TV YouTube channel gave free advertising to Senator Fateh in 2020, and in turn, once he got into the Senate, he proposed giving that channel $500,000 in cultural heritage grant money.
Our campaign finance rules are very clear.
Somali TV has been a community bulletin board, essentially, for the Somali community.
Fateh and his attorney, Kristen Hendrick, disputed that, showing a letter from Somali TV saying Fateh paid for the ads that ran on that YouTube channel, asserting there was no quid pro quo arrangement or conflict of interest.
There's no connection then between that advertisement and his later authoring of the appropriations bill.
The point of this hearing was to decide if there's enough probable cause to order a formal investigation, but the panel put off that decision until their next meeting. One of Senator Fateh's campaign volunteers, his brother-in-law, in fact, was recently convicted of lying to a federal grand jury about an absentee ballot scheme in the 2020 primary. The same group of Senate Republicans have filed a second complaint against Fateh, saying he didn't do enough to get to the bottom of that scheme. The committee will hear about that when they meet again next week. From the Capitol, John Croman, KARE 11 News.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, 3 years later, he's now about to be the mayor. He's elevated in status, essentially, to this great national figure. Nobody's asking questions because in the scheme of Minnesota politics, it's basically just another day, right? So I don't know what's going on up there. I'm not saying they're the only place, but there's this weird, this repeated trend of these very weird, very shady, corrupt, sociopathic people running the Democrat Party up there, right? And Glenn Walz, who could forget about her, Tim Walz's wife. I mean, what is going on? It's scary. Is there a curse there or something? I don't know. But all right, with that, all of that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. What do you think of the internal conflict now brewing over this in the party? Let me know your thoughts on Mr. Omar Fateh. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.